Have you ever wondered what happens when billions of dollars worth of cutting-edge military power lands on a war-torn battlefield? Imagine the dust settling from relentless missile barrages and drone swarms, and then, suddenly, the tide shifts. Ukraine and Russia have been locked in a grim war, each side battered and bruised, scraping together their last scraps of strength and resources just to survive. But now, at this desperate crossroads, a lifeline nearly impossible to ignore arrives from Washington, a staggering $3.5 billion infusion meant to breathe new fire into Ukraine's fight. The clock is ticking, and patience has run dry. The leader in the White House slams down the gauntlet. Furious at Russian missile strikes that pummel Kiev and other cities, and enraged by drone incursions crossing into Poland and Romania, he labels these acts as crossing red lines. The message is clear: Ukrainian resistance must be armed to levels Putin's forces have never faced before. On September 17, the first batch, worth $2 billion, began to roll into Ukraine. Another $1.5 billion follows swiftly in October. What unfolds is no ordinary shipment but a harbinger of devastation for Russian troops, a payload packed with nightmares for Kremlin generals, a foreshadowing of strategic defeat, and a beacon of hope unbroken for Ukraine. Among the most crucial elements carving the path toward victory are the Patriot air defense systems, accompanied by hundreds of new interceptor missiles. These systems have rewritten the rules of engagement in two profound ways. First, as an impenetrable shield. Major Ukrainian cities, Kiev, Kharkiv, Odessa, have been spared the fate of utter ruin. Without these US-engineered guardians, such metropolises might have evaporated into rubble, erased like Mariupol stands today. These shields protect more than just buildings and streets, they safeguard the spirit and resolve of a nation refusing to yield. Yet, the Patriots morph from passive defenders into relentless hunters. Positioned strategically near frontline zones, these batteries turn into predators stalking the Russian Air Force. The mighty Su-34 and Su-35 fighter jets, Russia's crown jewels, now hesitate to approach, knowing that swarms of long-range Patriot missiles can strike them down high above battlefields before their lethal runs even begin. This new reality cripples Russian air superiority. Russian pilots must rely on less precise, long-distance bombardments, weakening the pressure from the sky on Ukrainian ground fighters. If fresh Patriot units arrive with this shipment, Ukraine could expand no-fly zones and progressively dismantle Russian dominance in the air. What happens next is even more jaw-dropping. If the Patriot is the sky's shield, then the HIMARS and their longer-range cousins, the ATACMS, become the war's surgical hand of justice. These devastating tools give Ukraine the power to reach inside Russian-controlled areas once thought untouchable, striking with pinpoint accuracy hundreds of kilometers behind enemy lines. This new trench could bring hundreds more GMLRS rockets and ATACMS ballistic missiles capable of hitting targets up to 300 kilometers away. Yet these weapons do more than unleash explosions, they dismantle the very nerve centers of the Russian military machine. Command posts where hardened generals orchestrate their campaigns become vulnerable. A single missile obliterating one of these hubs eliminates not just a commander but the entire planning staff on that front. No Russian leader can now find solace behind their lines. Next on Ukraine's deadly checklist are the massive ammunition dumps Russia depends on. Artillery shells, rockets, and other vital supplies hidden deep in places like Crimea and Donbass are transformed into fiery infernos with every precise strike. Without ammunition, Russian artillery loses its teeth. Added to this, the critical veins of Russian supply, the bridges, rail junctions, fuel stockpiles, now lie exposed to Ukrainian reach. Cut these, and the entire enemy apparatus starts to crumble. An army without fuel, food, or ammo is an army without hope. Air bases and troop assembly points, locations hitherto considered safe, are pulled under the missile's shadow. Aircraft, helicopters, and convoys gathering behind the front lines become irresistible targets for these long-range strikes. Soldiers out front now wage battles shadowed by the awareness that their support network might collapse at any moment. This uncertainty gnaws away not only physical strength but also psychological fortitude, fracturing morale deep within enemy ranks. But this aid package is not just about epic long-range drama. It's also packed with brutal, up-close tactical tools designed to win fights right on the ground. Consider the vast shipments of 155mm artillery shells, including smart rounds like Excalibur, which turn Ukrainian artillery into unstoppable force multipliers. Paired with advanced radar systems, Ukrainian forces can instantly pinpoint Russian artillery fire, retaliating with deadly precision before the enemy can shoot again. Add to this the armored vehicles, the Bradleys and Strykers, that shield Ukrainian troops like walking fortresses while punching holes in Russian trench lines, shifting the war's momentum. Together, these assets ensure Ukraine can do more than just hold the line. They can push back, reclaim territory, and prepare for future offensives aimed at driving invaders back home. Yet, the impact of this colossal $3.5 billion aid doesn't stop at today's battlefields. It reshapes the very future of the conflict and Russia's military fate. Russia's monthly production of tanks, artillery, and vehicles is finite. But with such devastating new weaponry, Ukraine is set to destroy far more than Russia can replace. This brutal arithmetic will eventually strip Russia of its mechanized strength, relegating its forces to outdated infantry units. As Russian logistics collapse, air power wanes, and armored forces erode, maintaining control over seized Ukrainian lands will become impossible. This package lays the foundation for large-scale Ukrainian campaigns planned for 2026 and beyond, offensives intended to wear down the invaders, reclaim all occupied lands, and even liberate Crimea. Beyond the battlefield, this aid spells a harsh economic blow for Russia. As Soviet-era arms are decimated, Moscow must drain resources to replenish lost gear, forcing costly delays in next-generation tanks, aircraft, and naval projects. Meanwhile, witnessing these defeats devastates Russia's global arms reputation. How many countries will still trust Russian air defense systems or artillery when their failures lie exposed before the world's eyes? This $3.5 billion commitment is far from charity. It is America's defiant statement that Ukraine must triumph and Russia must be broken strategically. In a cruel twist of fate for the Kremlin, the most advanced weapons of the United States are now at Russia's doorstep. Ukraine has turned into a high-tech graveyard for its invaders, a relentless steel storm poised to drown ambitious imperial dreams and secure freedom's future. But the shattering of Russian trenches isn't the war's only tremor. An invisible front hums beneath, the economic chokehold tightening around Russia. Massive transport planes and military trains streaming into Ukraine don't just carry weapons, they carry the final nail sealing the Kremlin's economic fate. At the center of this economic front stands one figure, the commander-in-chief of this new fight, demanding not only Moscow's defeat but also urging Europe to stand firm in this relentless pressure. The stakes have never been higher, and the question remains, how long can Russia survive this multifaceted storm? Imagine a sky once dominated by fearsome fighters now silent, as unseen missiles weave through clouds like deadly predators. Cities like Kiev, and Odessa were already shielded from utter ruin by the arrival of the Patriot air defense systems, but their true power revealed itself not just in defense, but as relentless hunters. These Patriot batteries, strategically placed near the front lines, turned into a nightmare for Russia's prized warplanes, the Su-34 and Su-35. No longer could these multi-million-dollar jets approach without dread. Patriots' long-range missiles tracked and struck them at dizzying heights, before they could even unleash their weapons. This relentless hunt crippled Russian air power. Unable to count on precision strikes from the sky, Russian forces were forced to rely on less accurate, long-range bombing, weakening the pressure on Ukrainian ground troops. The arrival of more Patriot systems now promises to expand Ukraine's no-fly zones, choking Russia's dominance of the skies piece by piece. If the Patriot system is the shield above, then the HIMARS and its longer-range counterpart, the ATACMS, are the decisive, unforgiving strike arm on the ground. These weapons are rewriting the rules of warfare, capable of turning the places Russia once considered safe into blazing infernos. This new $3.5 billion aid package could flood Ukraine's arsenal with hundreds of guided multiple launch rocket system (GMLRS) rockets and bring dozens of ATACMS ballistic missiles, reaching targets up to 300 kilometers deep behind enemy lines. But this is no mere barrage, these strikes are surgical strikes on the very nervous system of Russia's war machine. The prime targets? Russian command and control centers, heavily armored forts where generals plot and dictate the war's course. An ATACMS missile tearing into such a center doesn't just kill a commander, it shatters the entire front's strategy, leaving Russian forces leaderless and blind. What happens when the brain of the army is shredded? Chaos. Disarray. The front lines fray as communication breaks down. And the missile storm does not stop there. The colossal ammunition depots, lifelines stocked with shells and rockets critical for sustaining Russia's relentless artillery barrages, are next. HIMARS and ATACMS missiles ignite these stockpiles in spectacular explosions that blot out the sky, each blast a hammer blow against Russia's firepower. Supply routes, those vital veins pumping fuel, food, and reinforcements, are under constant threat too. Bridges, railroads, fuel hubs, all within reach of Ukraine's deep strikes, begin to collapse like dominoes. Soldiers left stranded without fuel tanks or food face a grim fate. Rear air bases become vulnerable, with helicopter and airplane hangars vulnerable to strikes that cripple Russian air support before it can even take off. This devastating pressure is as psychological as it is physical. Russian troops fight with the gnawing fear that their lifelines could vanish at any moment, undermining morale and willingness to hold ground. Yet the aid does more than threaten Russia's backbone, it directly strengthens Ukraine's teeth on the battlefield. Hundreds of thousands of 155mm artillery shells, including highly sophisticated Excalibur smart shells, shift firepower decisively in favor of Ukraine. With advanced Western radar, these artillery units turn into lethal hunters themselves, detecting the flash of a Russian howitzer or launcher instantly and destroying it before it can fire again. Armored fighting vehicles like the Bradley and Stryker enhance Ukraine's offensive punch, offering armored protection and precision firepower to crush Russian trenches and advance through enemy lines. The battlefield is no longer just for defense, Ukraine is gearing up for a mechanized counterstrike that could tip the scales. This substantial aid isn't a fleeting boost, it's a long-term game-changer. Russia faces a deadly arithmetic: the volume of tanks, artillery, and vehicles it can produce cannot keep pace with what Ukraine's new weapons are destroying. Over time, this imbalance will tear apart Russia's mechanized strength, reducing it to a shadow of a modern army. As Russian logistics falter, air power drains away, and armored units shrink, the occupied Ukrainian territories become untenable for Russian forces. This package lays the foundation for the decisive offensives Ukraine plans for 2026 and beyond, aiming not just to repel but to reclaim every inch of lost land, including Crimea. But the consequences stretch beyond the battlefield. Russia's military setbacks echo worldwide. Its aging equipment hard hit, Russia's future tank, aircraft, and ship programs will stall, delayed by years as Moscow scrambles to replace losses. Worse still, Russia's once impressive reputation in the global arms market is shattered. After watching patriots decimate their systems, who will trust Russian-made air defense? After HIMARS and ATACMS reveal their artillery's vulnerabilities, who will invest in Russian weapons? This is not charity. This $3.5 billion injection is a stern warning: America's ironclad commitment to Ukraine's victory and to Russia's strategic collapse. Putin, who sought to push NATO away and break American influence, now faces a bitter irony: America's most advanced conventional weapons stand at his doorstep. Ukraine has become a high-tech graveyard for Russia's army, transforming the conflict into a steel tsunami destined to drown imperial ambitions. But amid the thunder of explosions and missile strikes, there lies an unseen front: the economic war. The shipments arriving in Kiev do more than arm soldiers, they deliver the final nails into the Kremlin's fragile economy. This surge of aid signals a new, ruthless chapter in the West's economic blockade against Russia. As rockets roar across the skies of Ukraine, the economic noose tightens. Debt mounts, resources drain, and Russia's inescapable defeat casts a long shadow over its future. What remains to be seen is how much longer Russia can withstand this crushing pressure, how many leaders will fall before the tide finally turns. Will this relentless wave erase Russia's foothold and secure Ukraine's freedom forever? The stakes could not be higher, the outcome more uncertain. Previously, we saw how Ukrainian forces are zeroing in on the nerve centers of the Russian military, command and control hubs where armored generals orchestrate the brutal conflict. With every ATACMS missile that finds its mark, a general's influence vanishes along with the entire frontline's coordination, an escalating nightmare for the Russian leadership. Yet, Russia's commanders no longer enjoy safety even away from the battlefield. Their massive ammunition depots rank next on Ukraine's hit list. These stockpiles, stuffed deep in Crimea and Donbass with thousands of tons of artillery shells and rockets, are being transformed into towering infernos by precision strikes. The HIMARS and ATACMS systems unleash devastation with a single hit, turning these arsenals into blazing fireballs that cut off essential firepower. Without ammo, artillery units become silent, their thunder stilled. Beyond ammo dumps, Ukraine targets Russia's fragile lifelines, bridges, rail hubs, and fuel stores, all vital veins feeding the war machine. Targets once deemed secure are now well within striking range. Imagine rolling plains suddenly shattered by fiery explosions severing key supply routes. Russian troops find themselves stranded, tanks immobilized, and fronts starving for fuel with no relief in sight. An army that cannot be fed or resupplied collapses like a house of cards. Even rear airfields and military staging zones are under threat. Helicopters and warplanes parked far from combat zones, once thought invulnerable, now risk obliteration. Convoys carrying fresh troops to the front become moving targets. Potential victims of lightning-fast missile strikes. This isn't just a battle of weapons but a war of nerves, forcing Russian soldiers on the front line to fight under the dread that their backup may be wiped out before they can even count on it. The psychological pressure chips away at morale, slowly eroding the will to continue. While the Russians reel, this massive aid package delivers more than just strategic might. It arms Ukraine's front lines with the tools to win battles here and now. Hundreds of thousands of 155mm artillery shells, both standard and precision-guided like the Excalibur, flood the Ukrainian arsenal. Coupled with state-of-the-art Western radar systems, Ukrainian artillery units can detect the exact moment a Russian howitzer or rocket launcher fires. In a heartbeat, counter-battery tactics zero in and obliterate these Russian gun positions before a second round can thunder home. The battlefield is becoming a deadly chessboard where every move by Russian artillery risks instant destruction. The rusted gears of the Russian war machine are grinding to a halt, not just under the weight of lost territory, but under the precision and speed of Ukraine's new arsenal. But what happens when the giants of war find themselves stripped of both arms and nerves? Will this relentless pressure force a fracture in Moscow's iron grip? The next moves are set, but the game's end remains uncertain. Previously, we saw how cutting-edge radar systems paired with precision artillery gave Ukraine the power to detect and obliterate Russian artillery units before they could fire a second shell. This advanced tactic, known as counter-battery fire, turned the tide on the battlefield. Now, ironclad vehicles like the Bradley and Stryker are stepping into the spotlight, transforming the Ukrainian offensive in ways few expected. These armored giants do more than just shield soldiers from the deadly hail of bullets and shrapnel. Their formidable weapons and high-tech sensors punch through Russian trench defenses, tearing open lines that once seemed impenetrable. Ukraine isn't just standing firm anymore, it's gearing up to reclaim lost ground with a mechanized fury. Imagine the crunch of thick metal treads carving paths through devastated fields, echoing close-range booms as enemy positions crumble. The battlefield is shifting. Ukraine's forces are breaking the mold of a purely defensive posture. But this $3.5 billion aid package is far more than a short-term boost. It's a seismic strategic move that will redefine the war's trajectory and Russia's military fate for years, if not decades. Think about it, Russia's ability to churn out tanks, artillery, and armored vehicles each month is capped by its industrial limits. Meanwhile, Ukraine's new influx of weapons will destroy equipment at a rate Russia simply cannot match. This cruel math means the Russian army will slowly lose its modern mechanized edge, forced to rely increasingly on outdated infantry tactics. As Russia's logistical chains crumble, air power falters, and armored divisions dwindle, holding on to captured Ukrainian lands will turn into a nightmare. The once feared Russian war machine faces the grim prospect of collapse across vast territories. This new aid sets the stage for Ukraine's planned massive offensives in 2026 and beyond, aiming to inflict relentless damage that compels Russian forces to retreat step by bloody step to the borders they once crossed with such confidence. Looking further ahead, the implications grow even sharper. Russia will be compelled to drain its economy and squander future military budgets just replacing old Soviet-era gear lost on Ukrainian soil. The war isn't just a battle for territory now, it's a crippling economic drain that pushes Russia's military innovation projects into indefinite delay. High-tech new tanks, aircraft, and warships, once symbols of future strength, will remain mothballed dreams as Moscow digs itself deeper into a costly defense quagmire. The battlefield may echo with the thunder of artillery and the roar of engines, but the quiet economic toll is just as deadly. Russia's strategic struggle has become a game of attrition with no exit, crippling its ability to compete militarily for generations. The fate of this brutal conflict now hinges on whether Russia can keep pace with losses it simply cannot replenish. The looming question remains, how long before the mighty bear stumbles, weighed down beyond recovery? Previously, we saw how this massive aid package will force Russia to drain its entire economy and stall its military upgrades for decades. Now, imagine the long-term consequences. Russia's ambitious projects for next-generation tanks, aircraft, and warships are forced into the shadows, delayed indefinitely. But the damage doesn't stop on the battlefield. How does a powerful nation lose its global standing in arms sales? Russia's weapons, once feared, now lie in ruins before America's cutting-edge systems in Ukraine. Those Patriot missiles painting the skies with destruction leave a haunting question in the minds of world buyers. Who would trust the Russian S-400 air defense system anymore? And after HIMARS pounding key targets, who'd put money on Russia's artillery still? This isn't just a military disaster for Russia, it's an unprecedented economic and political catastrophe rolled into one. This $3.5 billion infusion of aid? It's not charity or a simple show of support. It's the clearest, most uncompromising assertion of America's commitment to Ukraine's triumph, and to Russia's ultimate defeat. Irony cuts deep here. Putin, who aimed to push NATO back and shatter American influence, now finds himself surrounded by the most advanced weapons the US possesses. His own empire is crumbling on Ukraine's soil, turned into a high-tech graveyard littered with shattered Russian machines. This steel wave hitting Russia is only just beginning. It threatens to drown Putin's imperial ambitions and secure a free future for Ukraine. But beyond the thunder of missiles and shattered command posts lies a quieter battlefield, one no less deadly, the economic front. Picture those massive airlifters, C-17 cargo planes departing Washington, or long military convoys rolling relentlessly toward Kiev. They carry more than weapons. These shipments are driving the final nails into the Kremlin's economic coffin. This new surge of military aid is a game-changer, signaling the start of a relentless Western siege targeting Russia's economy. It squeezes every resource, halts supplies, and tightens the noose. At the heart of this campaign, commanding this unseen but ferocious front, is a familiar figure, Donald Trump. His voice echoes across capitals, issuing an ultimatum so stark it leaves no room for debate. Will Moscow yield? Will Europe follow? The stakes have never been higher. The question now is, can Russia withstand this two-front storm, or will its empire crumble under the weight of steel and sanctions alike? Previously, we explored how a fresh surge of military aid sparked a new chapter in Ukraine's fight. This wasn't just about weapons, it was a strategic blow designed to suffocate Russia not only on the battlefield but also economically. Now, a dramatic shift unfolds on the economic front, with the former president stepping into the spotlight as the commander of this silent front. Following the arrival of this overwhelming support to Ukraine, a stark ultimatum echoed from Washington, aimed not only at Moscow but also at its European partners. The message was unforgiving and crystal clear: it's your move. Cut off every last drop of oil and gas from Russia without delay. Close every loophole in the sanctions. Together, we must crush this serpent's head. The warning was sharp and uncompromising: if the Europeans didn't act, America would proceed alone. I did my part. Now you must do yours, was the unmistakable challenge. This hardened stance marked a turning point. The war's objective was no longer just to halt Russian aggression in Ukraine. The new mission was to shatter Russia's economy and cripple its war machine so thoroughly that rebuilding would become impossible. Every missile fired from Ukraine's new arsenal and every sanction enacted by the Treasury became twin barrels of one deadly weapon aimed directly at the same heart. To grasp the devastating precision of this strategy, consider a vivid scenario. Imagine a Ukrainian ATACMS missile tearing through a Russian T-90M tank 150 kilometers behind the front lines, an undeniable military victory. But the story takes a deeper turn. As the tank roll is lost on the battlefield, back in Russia, the factory meant to produce its replacement crashes against an invisible fortress of sanctions. The specialized microchips powering the tank's advanced targeting no longer arrive from Taiwan or South Korea. The critical precision ball bearings for the engine are out of reach, thanks to banned imports from Germany. Essential high-tech manufacturing equipment, from Japan and Italy, is also blocked. Each sanction tightens the noose on Russia's capacity to replenish its losses. Unlike previous conflicts where armies could rebuild over time, this war uses economic chokeholds and precise military strikes like twin surgeons, severing Russia's ability to wage war both today and tomorrow. Can Moscow weather this relentless squeeze? Or will the combined weight of missiles and economic walls crumble its armor from within? The answer hangs heavy in the cold air, whispering of a decisive, perhaps irreversible future. What happens next could redefine the fate of an empire and ignite the final chapters of this brutal battlefield saga. We just uncovered how the loss of a frontline tank is no longer a battlefield accident but a financial choke point. What if the world's most feared armor vanished not under fire, but because its supply chain hit an invisible wall of sanctions? Imagine a silent ledger where every line item flashes red, where banks in distant deserts tremble at the thought of being cut off from the global money network. The United Arab Emirates, Kazakhstan, even remote trading hubs now face a stark warning: keep dealing with the prohibited parts, and you will be erased from the international financial system. This deadly combination means that every tank smashed by incoming fire also becomes an unrecoverable hole in the Russian war machine. The synergy is ruthless. Military aid shatters armor, while economic pressure makes replacement impossible. Each loss freezes forever, turning a battlefield defeat into a permanent strategic wound. Now that the armor is cracked, how does Moscow try to patch it with kitchen appliances? Picture engineers scavenging discarded dishwashers, ripping out tiny silicon chips, and soldering them into missile guidance units. Picture smuggling routes winding through desert checkpoints, where parcels marked as spare parts actually contain precision ball bearings stolen from German warehouses. Cryptocurrencies flicker on dark web ledgers, moving money faster than any sanctioned bank could. The United States threatens secondary penalties on Indian and Chinese firms that purchase Russian oil, while simultaneously blacklisting ship operators that run the shadow fleet across the Black Sea. Every sanctioned vessel that turns away drags Russia's oil revenue lower, squeezing the Kremlin's budget and choking the fuel that powers its war machine. Yet the Kremlin refuses to sit idle. It is building a clandestine network that mirrors the covert economies of Tehran and Pyongyang, using illicit finance, crypto, and repurposed civilian electronics to keep its weapons humming. Will these desperate stopgap measures be enough to keep the front lines alive, or will the twin blows of battlefield loss and financial isolation finally fracture the Russian war effort? Previously, we saw how Russia's attempts to dodge sanctions are pushing it toward survival tactics more suited to struggling states like Iran and North Korea. They are even stripping microchips from household appliances to power military gear. Today, the situation grows even more desperate. Imagine oil being exchanged not for money but for weaponry. Barter deals with countries like Iran where Russian oil flows out and drones come back. This isn't the strategy of a superpower. Instead, Russia is turning into a scrap dealer, clinging to short-term survival at the cost of its future. A nation with enormous industrial and energy power cannibalizing itself? It's a staggering fall from grace. Putin faces a brutal crossroads. Does he drag this war on, sacrificing hundreds of thousands of lives, watching his economy crumble, his people sink into hardship, and Russia become little more than an energy outpost of another power? Or does he accept a strategic defeat, withdraw forces from Ukraine, and try to rebuild what remains through negotiation? Right now, the Kremlin stubbornly clings to the first path. But each damaging battlefield report, every $1 billion lost from oil revenues, and the rising unrest among citizens edge the reality closer. The fate of a nation balances on this razor's edge. Meanwhile, a $3.5 billion lifeline from Washington arrives, packed with modern weaponry and backed by tightening sanctions. This is no mere aid, it's a thunderous declaration forged in steel and dollars. It says, your time is running out, and the choice is before you are running dry. In the coming months, the world will watch. Will this message break the iron will and end this devastating conflict? Or will the war drag on, dragging Russia down further, deeper into ruin? The clock is ticking, and history waits for no one.